Spanning the globe, getting you the latest news in the world of metal, or not even just always news, but just stuff that we think is going to be good topics, not only that you may want to discuss with us, we at least hope you do, but Biv and I want to discuss with each other because we're metalheads and we're friends and we talk metal. And we're talking metal with you as well. And a guy who comes up on the show often, mostly because he's a piss, but also because he happens to be right a lot of times and inflammatory. He is a walking, talking headline, and then it is none other than Gene Simmons. Now, the thing that I find interesting about what he says here is a topic that has been mentioned many, many times on According to Metal, and it talks about the music industry as a whole and where it is and where it's been and where it's going, moving on. And so his quote is the headline, Gene Simmons, the people that killed all the new bands are the fans themselves. So one of the things he mentioned recently, and he was kind of asked his opinion, first of all, on Spotify or streaming audio services and kind of what his thoughts and opinions are on it. And he had said, good luck to him as far as the Spotifys of the world. He's like, I'm not a supporter. I do believe in free market economy, supply and demand, and all that kind of stuff. But I support Taylor Swift and Metallica or anybody else who doesn't want to play the game. The Beatles didn't want to play that game for a long time. But then he goes on to be honest, which is where I think Gene can be endearing at times. He says, look, it doesn't affect me. I'm a rich bastard. This is verbatim. This is what he's saying. I'm not paraphrasing. He said, I'm a rich bastard. I do well. By some standards, I'm rich and famous and all that stuff. By Warren Buffett standards, I couldn't pick a booger off the floor for him, actually. Well, I can. But it's all relative. However, none of this affects me. It doesn't. I make a living. We have our fans. They show up. That's great. We sell truckloads. We outsell the Beatles and Elvis Presley on licensing and merchandising combined, as well as the other 10 bands put in there. But imagine if you're a new band and you have your passion and your music and you really love it, you can't do it. There's nothing else. You can't show up live because they don't know who you are. So somehow you got to get the music out there. But if you want to earn a living, you can't get the music out there. So you're living in your mother's basement, and you have to have a day job and the kids to get your music for free. And I'm just promoting my live shows. You kind of put the music out there for free so you can promote the live shows. It doesn't work. And the people that killed all the new bands are the fans themselves. It wasn't corporate America. It wasn't aliens from space. The people that killed the music they love are the people who love the music. Biv, your thoughts. And we've talked about this with a handful of artists on our show who don't really disagree with much of what Gene's saying.
Well, even the sun shines on a dog's ass once in a while. And I have to say, Gene's right. We as fans, beginning with Napster in the late 90s, killed the music industry. We did. And so now we bitch because Blind Guardian doesn't come to my town. Well, no, they can't afford to. Why? Because they get paid 0.0008 cents per play on Spotify, and no one buys a CD anymore. And why would you? I mean, for $9.99 a month on Spotify, I get to listen to it, and I'm a single guy, so I'm probably, more the exception than the rule. But I get to listen to hours and hours and hours and hours of music for $10 a month that I never bought. In any order I want to. I can listen to the entire CD. I can make a playlist. I can do whatever. So why would you? Now, that being said, I've really been researching this topic since we started the show over a year ago.
It was one of the first things we ever talked about on the show.
It is. And I've done my homework. And I've come up with a plan. And that is, I feel like the bands, what they should do is when they release a CD, the top 3 or 4 tracks or singles should be released on Spotify so that we can sample the record. Think Primal Fear, right? If they had released their top 3, singles, would you have bought the CD? Probably. We both loved that CD. But I think if you bundle the CD with a T-shirt and, say, a discounted ticket coupon to see them when they come to your town or your region for $20, people would buy it all day. So that way you're buying a T-shirt that you can wear proudly to the show. You've got a hard copy of the CD. You get to hear the whole thing, not just the 4 tracks that were released on Spotify. And now you've got an incentive to come to the closest town that they're going to play to you. I think it's a brilliant marketing strategy. And it gives value to the customer.
No, it does. I think the thing that I would... Here's the thing I've been struggling with on a side note. I've yet... Any album I have bought, and let's just be brutally honest with our listeners, Biv, and be brutally honest with ourselves.
Okay, all right.
I subscribed for a long time, whether I want to admit this or not, of music being, Spotify. I got all my music from there.
Sure.
And one of the things that this podcast has really helped me understand and really learn, and maybe it's just because you start to, granted, I mean, it's just talking over Skype. It's not like we're BFFs or anything like that, but just some of the people we've got a chance to talk to and really get to connect with the artists and understand that, the reason why it sometimes takes 4 or 5 years to come out with a new album is not because they're lazy. It's because they got to work. They actually have a job. You know what I mean? It's not like they're sitting in the studio going, oh man, let me do take number 328 of this solo. It's because they're trying to fit in recording their album in their day jobs. Because realistically, unless you are a big name out there, you're working. Because you can't pull this off. Just like we can't do this podcast and monetize it to the point where we don't have anything else to do. It's the same concept. You know what I mean? They do it because they love it, and they hope one day they can get big, but damn it, I'm just going to have to try to fit it in between family and my job and all that good stuff. And so when you get to meet some of these bands, you get to know some of these people who are just willing to join your podcast to get their band out there and to give back to the fans in any way they can. You come to appreciate and respect them even more, and then you realize that I could stream their song on Spotify 10,000 times and they may see a couple pennies from it. That kind of sucks. However, if I'm also being honest, and I know, Biv, you're better about this than I have, where you've bought in CDs, you're still buying the tangible asset, the tangible item. If I buy the CD, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to buy it, I'm going to open it up, I'm going to throw it on my computer, I'm going to rip it, and I'll never use it again. And so the thrill of that tangible asset and the liner notes is just gone for me at this point. I've moved on. It's just not something I enjoy anymore, or is worth it to me. To me, it's better to save a couple bucks and actually just buy the digital copy of it on Amazon or however that may be. And actually, when talking like Kim Olsen from Anubiscade, he had mentioned that iTunes or on Amazon, they're actually making more off of that than an actual CD sale because there's nothing physical that has to be produced, essentially. So not only is the band getting a little bit more from it, but I'm going to get the music in the way that I'm going to use it because I can buy the CD all I want to. All I'm going to do is rip the damn thing. So it's just a waste of your time. Now, the only tangible thing I would buy at this point would be vinyl. If I can get my hands on a vinyl copy, hell yes, I will buy that. CD at this point, I'm wasting my money and your time in selling it to me versus somebody else who'd actually want the physical copy of it.
Well, and here's where you and I may have a generational gap. Because for me, now the CD is nice to have. And I, to your point, yeah, I'm going to rip it and it's sitting up on my shelf. And I'll never probably touch it again unless I'm going to look at the lyrics. But that being said, if it's bundled with a t-shirt, which, let's face it, when we go to a concert, what do we all do? We look at the t-shirts. If it's bundled with a discount for a ticket to a concert, or if you can't because they're not coming to a city near you or whatever, say a $5 off or a $5 gift certificate on the website for merchandise, would I be more likely to purchase it? Yeah, I would. Because to your point, if I just buy the CD, I'm just going to rip it and never use it again. So bands have to be creative today. LPs, vinyl. Imminent Sonic Destruction. We went to go see them in Chicago. They did a great job of merchandising. They had a lot to offer at the show. Now, can they make enough off of that to support themselves? Probably not. And so it's very difficult for them to go on tour. And if they do, it's usually within 200 or 300 miles of where they live. They go to Chicago. They go to St. Louis. They might hit Cleveland and come back, So, for me, I need value for my money. And the value to me is I want to show support, but I want something I can use. And the discounted ticket or the t-shirt or both would definitely help enhance my reasoning for buying that package.
That's an interesting point, and actually kind of ties into a little bit more further on the article of what Gene says, because one of the things he says is the last album they did was in 2012. They did Monster, and it sold 56,000 copies in the U.S. in the first week. It was number 3 in the Billboard 200 chart, which is sad because it's the number 3 album. It sold 56,000 copies.
How many did the Elder? Hold on. How many did the Elder sell in 1981? Its first week.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm going to tell you, because I saw this article and then I researched it. The Elder sold 340,000 copies its first week.
Right. This sold 56,000. And it was number 3 on the Billboard chart.
Right.
So that's a pretty big deal, and yet still no one bought it, and that was 5 years ago.
Right, and the Elder was 1981.
Right. But I just find what Simmons has said is recently that they're not interested anymore at this point in producing another Kiss album because unless there's another, and this is their quote, unless and if there's a financial model that works that make us worthwhile to write and record new music. Quote.
Okay, but if I got an exclusive t-shirt that I could not get anywhere else, the only way you get this t-shirt is with the purchase of that CD.
But here's the thing.
And I got either a discounted ticket or $5 off at the gift store at, kiss.com.
Okay.
Or whatever.
And there's some validity to that. Here's the problem. Some asshole buys the Kiss CD and sells the shirt on eBay.
Well, that's up to him to do it. That's fine. That's free market.
But then that uniqueness of having... a CD-only t-shirt isn't... You know what I mean?
Why would you do that? Because the only thing that's unique about that whole purchase is the t-shirt. So, he wouldn't even buy it if he was going to do that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just find it interesting that at least Gene, and we do show respect to bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest who've been doing it forever. They have more money than Jesus, but yet they still go in the studio and record new shit because they still feel inspired to record new music. It keeps them together as a band.
Well, it's all they've ever known.
Right. But then at the same time, Kiss, say what you want, at least they're being honest, saying, why in the fuck should we bother at this point getting our old ass in the studio,
we're all
writing and recording new stuff to sell no albums at all, when we can just every once in a while when we feel like it go around the country and play Detroit Rock City and play Rock and Roll All Night and play Deuce and play Strutter, and people lose their mind and go, it's the greatest rock band in the world, Kiss! And then Paul Stanley can get up there and embarrass himself and not be able to sing. And they'll still sell out, Dodger Stadium or wherever the fuck they do a concert every couple of years. And they'll make tons of money and Gene Simmons will be rich as fuck and no one cares.
No, I think you're right.
And that's what they do. And what's funny, he goes on to say, but he does bring up another good point really quick. And I will say this is where we find ourselves agreeing with douchebags, but at least they have a very valid point. In which, Gene said, he's like, and I forgot about this. And, and Biv, you may have too, but Gene brought up a really good point. He's like, you remember Radiohead put out a record in 2007. It was called In Rainbows. And it was the first album in which they said there was a digital download. And on the website, there was a digital tip jar. So you paid what you felt it was worth. And
no one paid shit.
Right. Barely people paid anything for it. And he's like, it doesn't work. He's like, charge people, make them pay, make a cross, draw a line in the sand. This is commerce. That's charity. Once you get your money, and all that stuff, then you can decide if you want to do charity. Or